Am I the jerk for not letting my guests sleep on the sofa, because that's my dog's place? My best friend's husband Bob, my husband's close friend, was kicked out from home for being an idiot and asked if he could spend the night at our place. We have a comfy pull-out sofa in our living room, which is where our dogs sleep. They had separate dog beds in the past, but they hated it so they sleep on the sofa now. Because of that, I told Bob he can have the air mattress. He asked if he can sleep on the sofa instead and I told him no, because that's where the dogs sleep. Bob didn't like it, but accepted. This morning, Bob was complaining about the air mattress deflating during the night and being so uncomfortable he barely slept all night. I checked and the mattress was fine. He also made some sarcastic comments to the dogs and me. My husband wants us to apologize to Bob for making him sleep on the air mattress. Am I the jerk for not wanting to be driven around by women, including my girlfriend? When I was a kid, I had a traumatic experience and was in an accident in the school bus which was being driven by a lady. Since then I have always had a phobia of being a passenger in a vehicle being driven by a woman. My mom did not drive, and even when my older sister learned to drive, I refused to drive with her even though my other siblings did. I have my license but not a car, and when I take public transit, I also take the next bus if a woman is driving. This is a phobia and I do not think women should not drive or anything. Recently my girlfriend and I moved in together and she has a car. She is really upset with me as, whenever we go out together I insist on driving her car. She says it feels like I am misogynistic when it is just a phobia. I said I would be okay taking public transit and she can drive her car and we could travel separately, but she thinks that is not a solution and that I should get over it. Am I the jerk here? It is not like I am telling her she cannot drive, and I apply this rule to everyone even when it inconveniences me. I told her she was free to ask my family about my past. Am I the jerk for telling my son he shouldn't go out in our yard anymore, since he's making our neighbors' daughters uncomfortable? My son is 13 but looks quite a bit older. Both my wife and I are tall, but he's set to pass me since he's 5 feet 10 inches and well built. He's a great kid, and I've never suspected him of saying or doing anything bad. We have a big yard and garden, and he'll go out there a lot to read or just mess around. Now our neighbor's yard is about 100 feet away, and there's these little patch of trees between us, but we don't have fences so you can see into each other's yards. We don't really talk or know each other, but he's got 2 daughters a bit younger than my son. The other week, neighbor comes and says my son is making his daughters uncomfortable. I asked if he did anything, and he says no, not like that. It's just he sort of intimidates them hanging around the yard. I talked with my son and he confirmed he never even looks in that direction. He never talks to them or even heard or saw them being uncomfortable. So I had a talk with my son earlier than I expected to. I told him that sometimes, people are going to be uncomfortable around him. That isn't his fault or their fault. We just need to respect other people, and make sure we aren't imposing ourselves on others. I get it, I'm a big guy. I have to cross the street all the time because women will speed up when they see me, which I completely understand. Hell, I even try to stay in more to avoid that. So I told my son that I'm not mad, but he probably shouldn't linger out in the yard alone anymore. He was upset but understood. My wife is furious. She says I should have talked to her first, and she's right on that front, and that our son hasn't done anything. I get that, but still I don't think he should be in the yard if he's making other people uncomfortable. Am I the jerk for giving my parents the address of my sister's wedding? My sister Jane had always had a strained relationship with our parents. The conflict that led to them not speaking to each other for a long time is because they told her ex-fiancé about a pre-existing medical condition she had. This ruined the relationship and Jane went low to no contact. She met her now husband and their wedding took place 2 weeks ago. The problem was that she did not invite our parents, although she reconciled with them, but she said it's her wish. Our parents reacted negatively and there was so much arguing to the point where Jane told them to either drop it or she'd cut them off. This grieved our parents a lot, as well as other relatives, but none of them wanted to tell them where the wedding is except me. I did it after my parents cried and said that they didn't want to miss a once-in-a-life opportunity to see Jane get married. I gave them the address and thought that Jane's heart might soften when she saw them. But instead, she went nuts and there was a blow-up at the wedding. Although our parents were nice, they were still kicked out of the place. Later Jane chewed me out for what I did and claimed I ruined her wedding. Her new husband told me to leave, which I thought an overreaction because mainly, our parents really cared enough to come and didn't want to miss the chance. Since then, Jane hasn't been answering my calls and her new husband keeps saying that I messed up and potentially ruined our relationship. Am I the jerk for not going out to drive my husband home when he got too drunk? This happened several days ago and he's still put out over it, so I don't know how to feel. My husband went out with a few friends of his friends, which he does just fine all the time. It was late, and I worked the next day, so I laid down. At almost 11, I get woken up by a call from him, totally smashed. After about 5 minutes of rambling, he says his friends left him somewhere and he needed a ride home. He was barely coherent and couldn't even tell me where he was, and I was tired and pissed off, so I told him he needed to find his friends and figure it out and I went back to sleep. I don't know when he ended up getting home. He was asleep on the couch when I left. Since then he's been short and distant, obviously still upset over it. He didn't tell me about what happened and has slept in the living room since. Gets testy if I even ask. Maybe it was mean not to go get him, but he's an adult and it shouldn't be my responsibility if he gets too drunk and wanders off somewhere. I want to mention his friends were driving, so I wasn't forcing him to drive home drunk. I figured if he'd really been in trouble, he'd have mentioned it or called back. I didn't think it was that big of a deal, but almost a week later he's still upset. Am I wrong?